Hey guys, and welcome back for another episode of the Butterfly Effect podcast. I'm Jack and I'm here with Liam.
Hello.
And today we are talking about the finale of The Walking Dead Season 1, Episode 5, titled No Time Left. Okay, so of course this chapter starts back in the morgue and Lee has still got the walkie-talkie in his hand after the stranger revealed that he's the one that has taken Clementine. And obviously thinking back from what happened last episode, we do have this revelation, this plot thread where Lee has been bitten. So just to refresh the audience, mate, what did you do? Did you show the rest of the group Lee's bite, or did you hide it?
I hid it, and because I dropped Ben, fell out with Kenny, and Christopher and Ami'd only come with you if you reveal the bite. I was all by myself here, just me and a horde of zombies.
Oh right, that's cool. So yeah, I think for me, we talked about it. It was more likely that I was going to be with Kenny. So yeah, obviously not as bad as you, whereas you're on your own. But yeah, I mean, did you sort of want to talk through, how this scene played out for you? Because there's a couple of little things, isn't there, where you're looking for a way out and you get the car jack to work on the elevator, but you have a pretty dark scene following that, don't you?
Yeah, so obviously, we've all played it. We've seen it in the quarry, and a little bit in Until Dawn, but this is the amputation scene. So depending on the cast that you get with you, Krista's usually the one to do it. If they're not there, then Kenny will be the one to do it. If it's just you and Ben, I've never seen just Lee and Ben, so I imagine Ben's the one to do it. But obviously, because I was all by myself, I had to cut my own arm off, which was very interesting. When the choice came about, I didn't hesitate. I was like, you know what, like, maybe in real life I'd be a bit more hesitant, maybe I would pussy out there, but I just was looking at it like, you know what, I've got nothing to lose. If there's a shred of a chance of it being able to have like Lee back with Clementine and they both survive, I have to take it. So yeah, I chose to cut his arm off, and it's brutal because he's doing it himself, and if Krista or Kenny are doing it for you, you kind of pass out, but they're holding your arm and they're making sure it gets done cleanly. But for myself, I just had to cut my own arm off, and the whole thing was brutal because it's like you had to stay awake so you don't do a half botch job, really dark. So yeah, I was kind of regretting being alone at this point, but it also made the whole experience very interesting. I mean, how about you? How did your amputation scene go, and what did you choose to do?
So obviously it was just me and Kenny, and you know what? I'm struggling to remember whether he does it or whether you have an option to do it yourself. But of course, like as you were saying, like very dark scene. Of course, dismemberment. I've got used to it, I'd say now. Playing these games, it seems to be a common thread, but I think this was the first time where I sort of saw this in a video game. If memory treats me right, serves me right. So yeah, like, and I don't know, that I suppose what I was thinking to myself is this point, because obviously I hadn't seen the TV series, so maybe you could help me out with that. But because he has been bitten, would cutting off his arm potentially save him, provided that that he got treated and bandaged up properly? Or is it almost instantaneous that as soon as it's in your bloodstream, that's it, it gets to your heart very quickly?
Yeah, so the game does very well to nod to the TV show. There's a lot of stuff like that, like covering yourself in zombie guts, which we'll cover later. But yeah, this is one of them. So obviously, I think the idea is that you get bit and you start to build a fever, and that kind of spreads up your arm, for example, in Lee's instance. You have to do it pretty instantaneously to make sure the infection doesn't go to the rest of your body. So yeah, that is actual Walking Dead lore.
Oh, nice. So of course, the group do then get ambushed by some zombies, or maybe in your case, just you get ambushed by some zombies. And you're then having to go back to the elevator shaft that you was at earlier on. and you have to start to climb it. And I thought it was quite a nice little scene. There's like moments where there's like zombies falling down. There's like a little QTE where you've got to dodge out of its way. But of course, you ultimately come up to hospital roof, and this is, I suppose, a bit of downtime where you can go around and chat to whoever you're with and plan your route out, because it seems very much that, at least at this point of the episode, although Lee's bitten, their purpose is to get across town and get to Clementine, isn't it? Like, the guy on the walkie-talkie made it very clear there's an ocean of walkers between us and you, so I'm quite relaxed about you not making it here.
Yeah, like, obviously this is the bit where you can get some downtime, chat to all the characters. I never got this. Like, my whole intro was such an isolating experience because I had no dialogue. It was cool in one way because, for example, the morgue, I would have like the sound effects just a lot more eminent. But yeah, like I'm walking around this roof and it's just objective, really. So, like, you know, you grab the ladder, and I quite like the bell tower scene. It's cool. You put the horde on one side of the building so you can escape down the other one. I myself, I'm not the biggest fan of heights, especially when it involves looking down from really high up. So it was quite a nerve-wracking experience seeing Lee have to do this jump. But ultimately, you know, you get through it. The quick time events are pretty straightforward, and then we end up back at the house.
Oh my god, I'll tell you what, before I get to that, I wanted to quickly give a nod to something. You know when Lee's going across the ladder and it ultimately buckles and it falls down? You then see it like land on a walk, and I'm like, yes, Lee, like, what a shot. He done it! Completely unintentional, but no, absolutely agreed with like the whole jump. And I was even looking at him like, mate, do you want to take a bigger run up than that? Like, you've got 1.5 arms now to be able to use as like momentum to jump across. I was thinking, you know, just maybe step back a little bit further, mate.
I mean, this scene can play in a variety of ways. If you manage to get the whole group with you, you just go into like the boathouse to realise that the boat's been missing and Vernon's left you a note. So this is the last we'll kind of see or hear of the cancer patients, at least in this season. They do come back in like drips and drabs for other bits. For myself, because I was alone, I just had the entire group trapped in a little boathouse, saying that Vernon and that trapped them in there, which I thought was a little bit worrying. I was like, how on earth is Vernon and like Morgan Freeman and a few other oldies with terminal illness locked away like Ben and Kenny? But yeah, I mean, how did this scene play out for you, mate?
Vernon and the crew, obviously is a dick move. Speaking from their point of view, like, they've been literally living in a sewer for God knows how long, like, worried because anyone from Crawford could come and kill them. And as expected, Kenny loses his shit. A little bit hypocritical, because literally last episode we was talking about how he was like, yeah, this boat can only fit 5 people, so we're going to have to Kenny cut and loose, as we call him now. Of course, it does then prompt if, I'll tell you what, it didn't for me, because Ben wasn't alive, but we did touch it on the last episode. Did we want to quickly give a quick nod to like Ben's speech, mate?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I wanted to do this because me and Jack dropped Ben in episode 4. You know, like whether it was because in Jack's case got sick to death of him, or for me because I just got dobbed into it and I caved in a little bit. But yeah, we never had Ben, and I actually would go to say as I regret it because I love this scene. It's just a really nice way to kind of wrap up Ben's story arc. The whole time he's getting pushed around by Kenny, like even prior to, you know, the knowledge that he's responsible for, you know, the bandits. But yeah, he does this really powerful speech where he just finally stands up to Kenny and says, no, fuck you, Kenny. And then, you know, he mentions like, yeah, I'm really sorry for duck and capture, but the big quote for me is, at least you had them to lose. And it's at this point where we realise, like, we don't really know anything about Ben, and it turns out he's got a little sister, he's got parents, and he never got to find them. He's just been stuck with this group the whole time. And, like, I mean, it's dark for Kenny, but it's true, he had them to lose. Ben's out there wondering, he doesn't even know what's happened to his family. And I'm not saying it completely forgives what he did throughout the seasons, because ditching Clementine is a big strike for me. Working with the bandits, yeah, that's pretty bad, you know, like, the really stupid decisions like pulling the hatchet, letting the zombies in the building. He has been a liability, you can't deny that. But I've always said it throughout the series. the guy is just a kid. And it's at this moment where we truly realise he's just human as everyone else. He's basically a teenager. He's like in an apocalypse. He doesn't even know where his family is. And I kind of like was a little bit with Kenny there, because Kenny's kind of just slapped in the face like, oh, Ben, I'm so sorry. And I think this is the point where it almost changes Kenny as well. And I like the fact that there's Krista there pulling you back like, nah, this speech needs to happen. So yeah, such a powerful scene. I was all for it. And when I saw it again in a different playthrough, I was gutted that I missed out on it on my blind playthrough. I don't know how you thought, mate.
Nah, I'll let him drop off in the bell tower. No. Very good points. It was really good to see him have that moment. Does it sort of make me forgive him, like you say? Absolutely not. And like, you know, the thing that resonated there, what you said, is that, yeah, we don't know anything about Ben. He's literally been with us since the beginning of episode 2. He just sort of hangs around. Like, there's been no real character depth there. So, like, speaking as like a, you know, as like a character study, or like just from his point of view, it's a really good moment for him, and you can sympathise with him in many ways. He's like Clementine. Clementine doesn't know what's happened to her parents and family, and she's relying on these people. And I think it's because of maybe the age difference, and because she's got less responsibility on her shoulders, that obviously she's not under the spotlight like Ben is. But yeah, I'm glad that we put that in there, because obviously we have been shitting on Ben quite a lot. We'll move on, because once again you have to fight off some walkers. And I don't know, this seems a little bit done. Maybe it was like sheer luck that they stumbled onto this. But you know, the group go upstairs and they push this desk back, and they've got what, like 10 bullets between them, maybe not even that. And they start shooting at these walkers, and they're like, where are we going to go now? And I was sort of thinking, you're telling me you didn't think about this beforehand? And the fact that the attic was there behind them, I was like, oh, that's, you know, that's a bit convenient and a bit lucky on their part. I don't know what you thought, mate.
Yeah, it reminds me of a certain scene from the first Resident Evil movie where a guy's like, "Oh, go on without me." There's zombies going up to him, then it turns out there's like a door behind him, and it's, oh, well done, mate. You just wanted the heroic kind of dramatic effects so you can do an epic comeback later. Yeah. No, I completely get you. It was really dumb. But obviously, like, the group escape into the attic, and another thing I really like about the fact whether you keep Ben here is that Carly has a Glock the whole game. You know, I should know this. I like girls with guns. And if you have Ben in the game, Lee drops it, but Ben will pick it up and retrieve it for you. So I think for the rest of this episode, you can play with Carly's gun, while you don't get that if you drop Ben. So I thought that was a nice little touch.
No, I didn't know that either. So obviously, yeah, they move up into the attic, and once again, it's a scene where you can pretty much just wander around, looking at things, having a chat with various people. A row does break out. You know, Kenny is up to his old ways again. He's already thinking about Lee, which, you know what, I know that it does, and it might sound a little bit edgy what I'm about to say, but I do think Kenny has a point here. Like, it'll be an interesting discussion, because obviously he knows that Lee's bitten. Lee is going to turn. They're trapped in an attic. And I do applaud Kenny for almost standing up to have the difficult conversations. Maybe he says it in a way that's quite insensitive when he says, oh, we might have a Larry situation, you know, he drops a salt lick on his head, for crying out loud. But you do need people like that in a survival group, I think. I don't think you can be wishy-washy all the time, but it does break out into a bit of a discussion, and it ultimately leads to the throwing like some sort of ceramic head. It takes away a bit of wall, which then says to the group, oh, we can, you know, go into next door and, you know, get out that way. But on that point, mate, in terms of like Kenny being insensitive but saying what he said, where do you stand on it? Are you with him?
Not really. I think the Larry one's a bit more forgiving, because he's down and out. He could turn if he is straight up dead there. And yeah, he's right. He's 7 foot. I mean, admittedly, yeah, he's on the floor. It'd be pretty easy to dispose the guy. But I think I mean, yeah, I applaud him for having the difficult decisions, conversations, even because someone has to make them. But I guess like maybe it's because I know the show better, and I've played the games long enough to know that like the turning process isn't instant, and I feel like you can kill someone off when you know they're dead, or whether like they start to revive as a zombie where they're on the floor and they have to like regain their steps. I feel like, and also they're all armed. If Lee falls dead and then he turns, one bullet to the head, boom. I mean, I know like I think they ran out of bullets, but you could get that statue. As Omid said, you ruined that guy's face. But yeah, you could kill Lee pretty easily if he turned. So I feel like having those early conversations maybe just seemed a little radical to me.
Okay, because I didn't view it as Kenny wanting to kill Lee then and there. I was thinking that he was looking at it as he was thinking ahead, like what happens if Lee does turn. Yeah. Exactly, contingency planning. Like I think it was wise that someone was there. Maybe could have done it better. Maybe could have spoke to someone else in the group a little bit more quietly rather than publicly shouting, "Oh, we're going to want to." Cave Lee's head in and all this sort of thing. And I know, like, I wouldn't say Kenny's my favourite character, but it is quite clear that he is flawed, but at the same time he is operating in that grey area, and I find that they are the more interesting characters for me. But
I agree. Like I like any character who can split opinions, and Kenny's that. He's not a perfect man, but there are quirks there and there are positives, and he's just such a fascinating individual. So yeah, there's just a lot of conversation to have with him.
But of course they do batter the wall through, and they head downstairs, and again another dark scene here where you see a couple lying in bed. They've clearly committed suicide because of the the world they're living in, because of the apocalypse. It just reinforces how much of a traumatic episode this is in people's lives, that they want to be able to have the agency of their own to just take their own life and not come back as a walker. And again, like, there's some moral questions there. You think back to the woman in episode 1, I think it is, at the motel, when she says that she wants to go and end herself, and otherwise there's the alternative of turning into a walker as well. So
I think it hits Kenny pretty hard because it reminds him a lot of Catcher, because I think he mentioned something about, you can't just give up, you have to try. So Kenny, I don't know if that's frustration showed at Catcher, but it definitely is a rough moment for him, because it definitely brings back the memories of episode 3 where his wife Catcher ended himself because she couldn't handle the world anymore.
Of course, yeah. And I mean, again, moving on from this sequence, the characters are very much on the move in this episode, but we find ourselves back on the roof again.
Yeah, I mean, I will actually intercept because I don't know if you know this, but do you know what happens to Ben? Because obviously you never had him in your chapter. Have you played it again with Ben inside the episode 5 mode?
No.
Oh, okay. Well, this will be really interesting for you then. So, now I thought this when I played our chapter without Ben, but you kind of like jump off the little balcony to get onto the roof.
Oh, yeah.
There's that weird shot where you see it kind of ricket and kind of break a little bit, but then nothing comes of it. Now, I looked at that, like, I reckon something happens if you do a different choice or if Ben's in the game. And then it turns out that is true. So Ben is the last to jump at this point, and he falls down into the alleyway.
Yeah.
So, like, Kenny and Lee go down like a fire escape, I guess, and then you remove all the signs because Ben's a little buried, and it turns out he's just fully been impaled on the floor on this spike. So Ben's just there dying on the floor. Yeah. And then, like, you're like, you and Kenny, you're panicking, you don't know what to do. And then zombies start coming from either side of the alleyway. And Kenny pushes you, kind of, and then locks the gate, and then is like, nah, go upstairs. It's like, me and Ben will sort this. And it's a beautiful story arc, because it kind of bounces back to Ben's speech earlier, and it's almost Kenny's way of saying sorry. And the zombies box them in, and essentially, you can't really see what happens, because there's like kind of 2 alternative ways this can play out, for Kenny, with or without Ben. But in this one, he's sort of pushing the zombies away. He's got 1 bullet left, and Ben's kind of like Kenny, like, or something, but then, like, he stops talking when a gunshot happens, and you have to assume that Kenny used his last bullet to put Ben out his misery. And we just don't see what happens to Kenny. We just sort of hear him screaming, and you have to assume he's dead. And then Lee just kind of goes up with Krista and Omid, and then you're free, and then you're kind of just a little disheartened. But obviously for us, we had quite a different one, didn't we? For us, if you don't have Ben in your game, there's this kind of, I guess you're at the top of a building, and there's almost like a hole that looks down into almost what looks like an empty office space. And I can't remember it from memory, because it's like, this is the rarer playthrough. We got the minority decision. I think Kenny pats your back or something, doesn't he? And the walkie-talkie falls down.
Right, okay.
I'm pretty sure Krista goes down to get it and then throws it back up to you. But then Kenny's like, nah, this was my fault. And then goes down there, chucks Krista up. And then you sort of see him running. You know, and then you don't see Kenny for the rest of season 1 anyway. And to be honest, although the ending with Ben is more powerful from like a cinematic point of view and kind of tying up Ben and Kenny's story arc, as like, you know, because they've been at each other's throats all game or whatever, it's very unrealistic. I look at it, I'm like, I don't know how Kenny survives that, because spoiler alert, he does. But with our version, you know, there's just like a dark office space. We sort of see maybe 2 to 3 zombies pass, maybe more. But it seems a lot more realistic, like he could have got out of that. So it's just a lot more of a plausible ending. But yeah, very interesting way to kill 1 or 2 characters off here to advance the story. I'll just let you have the floor for a minute, mate. What did you think of this whole scene? And if you just newly learnt about that whole Ben thing, yeah, tell us what you thought of that.
Yeah, so obviously I'll start with my playthrough, which of course, yeah, was the one Kenny dropping into the hole. It does, from what you've been describing, sound a lot more realistic than the alternative. And in true Telltale fashion, because Ben was supposed to die, or not supposed to die, he could have died at the bell tower earlier on. It was inevitable that he was going to get bumped off at some point. They sort of tacked his speech on, and, you know, it was inevitable that he was going to die at some point after that. Would have been interesting though to see if like he could have survived, but maybe in a Kenny fashion where you just don't see him again. I don't know. Yeah, you know what? Like as you were speaking, there was something coming back to me about that particular scene, about the alleyway and Ben being impaled and Kenny being there. And I completely agree with you. From what I can remember, there was literally a horde coming from both ends. How on earth is he meant to get out of that? Like, I know there was a moment before where Lee dropped down into the sewers, didn't he? I couldn't remember if there was anything like that down there. So, yeah, it is kind of BS, because it's sort of like characters getting killed out in the middle of the woods earlier, where there's like loads of space between them. Kenny's literally surrounded by zombies in this very thin alley, but he, you know, somehow gets away. But I don't know, maybe it was because that, like, such a loved character, or, you know, going into season 2 they wanted a returning character so that it would sort of help the fans ease in and accept the other characters. I don't know, but yeah, I mean, so obviously we've lost Kenny at this point, and the next bit that I remember is, again, you're going along the rooftops, and because Lee, he's like the one-armed bandit at this point. Like, it was a situation where Krista's pregnant, Umi's got a bad leg, so Lee's like, you know, I'll be the one that goes across the sign. But ultimately, it falls down, doesn't it? And we do then get this pretty cool section where Lee's got like this cleaver, and he's taking on the horde. He's literally just walking straight through them, and he's, you know, you get some moments where you get to kill some of them, and just head towards the Marsh Hotel where Clem is.
I love this scene because, like, the guitar breaks out, you've got your hatchet, you're killing zombies. If you fail QTEs, you take bites from the zombies, but it doesn't matter because you've already been bitten. And let's face it, Lee's really pale at this point. Yeah. We have sussed that the amputation hasn't worked, so we're just a one-armed bandit right now. And it's just such a badass scene because, like, this game's been very heavy on the dialogue and the gameplay. The action's probably been a little on the weaker side. But this is probably my favourite action sequence, where you're just walking through a horde, covered in guts, not caring, your priority's Clementine, and you're just recklessly killing all these zombies. And I was a big fan of this scene, mate.
Awesome. So yeah, we then move on, and Lee finds himself going into the hotel to obviously look for Clem, when a certain stranger announces himself, and as somewhat of a plot twist, the guy reveals himself to be the dad of a family. At the end of episode 2, you go to steal the supplies from the car, or at least I did. I know that in other playthroughs people didn't. He is like really annoyed at you about that, and for me, I don't know, it misses the mark a little bit, because this villain, or supposed villain, has been introduced at the end of episode 3 to like kidnap Clem. And if you didn't make the choice to steal the supplies, why on earth is he so against you? I don't know what you think on that, mate, but it just felt like a little bit of I don't know, it would have been maybe a bit more powerful if like Lily returned or something at the end of this, or I don't know how we can work around it.
I have mixed opinions of it, to be honest, mate, because on one hand, I'm glad they didn't go for a cop-out thing of maybe it being Clementine's dad, or a character we know, and it wouldn't have made sense, like, Glenn, or I don't know, like you say, like a Lily figure, because obviously we didn't recognise the voice kind of thing. I quite like the fact they went for the guy who owned the station wagon, because that scene was so well timed in the sense that it was randomly lumped on at the end of the cannibal episode and starved for help, and it almost didn't marry with the rest of the episode, and you're thinking that was a bit of a weird kind of just moral choice to shove on the end of that episode.
Yeah.
And I quite like the fact that it came to fruition at this point, like that one tiny decision you did actually had consequences, and I quite like that. It was quite a subtle choice. Like, you have wronged this man, but like in a subtle way. So I was sort of all for it. My problem with the choice, though, is that it only really makes sense for people like us who actually stole from the station wagon.
Yeah.
As you mentioned, people didn't steal from the station wagon, and the ending almost doesn't make sense if that's the case. Like, my brother didn't steal from it, and then the guy's still going after, like, you and kidnapping Clementine. And if you say, oh, I didn't steal from the station wagon, though, he goes, yeah, but there's all the other stuff you did, like, kill that man, or like, and he'll find it like a random other excuse. Yeah. And that just seems a bit clutching at straws for my liking. So yeah, like, mixed opinions, although I do admire the thought of it and the ambition to make it this guy.
Yeah, no, I think I'll be in agreement with you there. Obviously, Clem sneaks out, takes the cleaver, whacks it into his shoulder, and we then have a fight scene that ensues, and you've got some QTEs, and of course, unless you're terrible at the game, you do ultimately overcome him. And something else that's incredibly dark, because literally moments before he was talking about his wife and kid, and it looks like he's like speaking to a bag, and I'm thinking, what's this guy doing? But you look afterwards there, and isn't there like a zombie head in there? Like, you can hear a zombie, unless I'm completely mistaken.
He's got his wife's head, Tess, in the bag.
Yeah, like, God, that's absolutely. Oh, I can't even find the word for it.
Yeah, it's gruesome, because like, obviously he mentions how like you stealing from the station wagon was the start of his family's rupture, because his like wife fell out with him, took one of the kids away, and then like, because like the station wagon happened, like, they left you, and then like he later on found them dead in the woods. So he's basically blaming everything on you. But like, the fact that he keeps his wife's head in a bag, like, this guy's clearly unhinged. And it's just like, part of me would be like, you know what, I'm dying, I need Clementine to be of a safe owner. If he was civilized and, like, didn't go down it this way, I would consider it. But the fact that, like, I'm not leaving Clementine with a guy who keeps his wife's head in the bag, like, nah, fuck off, mate.
Yeah. It was like I do appreciate what they were trying to do, like giving like an emotional arc, and he was like, "Do I look like a monster to you?"
It's like, yes.
Yes, you are. So yeah, now it's all about getting out of the Marsh Hotel. You approach the door, don't you? And there's this zombie there. Not like a plot thread, but I suppose it's a bit of information giving, isn't it? That sort of comes out of nowhere. Like Lee sort of says to Clem, cover yourself in guts and they won't really notice you. I don't know what it is that prompts him to think that. Is it because he's bitten and none of the zombies were attacking him earlier? I don't know, but of course we do see this come back in later seasons, don't we, mate?
Yeah, because obviously the zombie just doesn't attack Lee, even though like prime opportunity is like less than a foot away from you. And it's, Clementine points out, you're covered in zombie guts because you went through the horde earlier, and maybe it is because you've bitten and you may be part zombie at this point. But yeah, like it is a really common thing in the TV show. It comes as close as season 1 in The Walking Dead, I believe, where you're just covered in absolute zombie gut. And basically, yeah, if you're covered in zombie guts, you mask yourself, and then this does become a common part of the TV show, and then the games adopt it, where Clementine and the likes of Jane are really common for doing it. But yeah, dead interesting, quite comedic, but also a little gruesome, covering Clem in all the guts. So you can kind of walk through, back through the horde for the next scene. Yeah, do you want to take this bit away?
Yeah, so Clem sees her parents amongst the horde, which of course is a very dark moment for her. And it got me thinking, because you know how in episode 4, Lee was just bitten by a random zombie?
Yeah.
I feel like if I was to change this game, if I was to like put my editing hat on and make some changes here and there, I would have probably had Lee not bitten in episode 4, because you know how it is with the 2-month wait. But then sat there thinking, well, Lee's going to die in episode 5. I'd have probably left it till episode 5 for him to get it. And maybe I'd have had it as one of Clem's parents was the zombie that do it. Maybe it's that me just got my like literature hat on. It's some like twisted irony that the guy that became sort of instep parent for Clementine was then killed by her actual parents. But I feel like that maybe would have been a little bit more powerful for me. I don't know. What, do you like that idea, mate? Or
yeah, certainly interesting. Like personally, I quite like the fact that the bite happened in episode 4, because it was really kind of tense, just knowing what would happen like 2 months later for the game. But also, I kind of had that kind of no fucks given attitude in episode 5, where I was just going through like, I'm getting Clementine safe, but I accept that Lee's not going to make it. But yeah, like I mean, that would have been quite cool. Like I get like it's quite realistic that just a random zombie out of nowhere would bite Lee at some point, but it kind of, there's a little element of, oh, you're not the real parent. This is the real parent, and now it's bitten you.
yeah.
So maybe there is some kind of cool literature thing there, and I definitely see why you could say that. But when we're talking about when Clem sees the parents, I don't know about you, mate, but this bit really fucking got me. Now, I don't know, like, my parents are, like, mean everything to me. And the thought that an 8 or 9-year-old girl, she's 9 now, because apparently we missed her birthday. That's one thing the stranger had to go at us for.
Oh, yeah?
She sees her parents, and you see her face drop. She's obviously, all season, what's been on her mind is going to Savannah to find her parents. And she sees them as zombies, like her mum and her dad together. No, like, and obviously at that age, you see your parents and there's a connection there, and they see you, they'd light up with a smile. These zombies don't recognize her. They're just walking around. They're not her parents anymore. They're like walking corpses. And I don't know, this really struck a chord with me. Like, yeah, like, I don't know, it broke me a little bit just seeing how destroyed Clementine's face was. And it's even more powerful that you're trying to move with Clementine throughout the horde and get out of there. But it's at this moment that Lee passes out, which is just so inconvenient. But yeah, I don't know, like this whole scene just really battered me. I know like the next scene's supposed to batter you more, but this one, hit me just as much, if anything. I thought it was fucking horrible.
Yeah, that's basically been her whole story arc, isn't it? It's been about trying to find her parents. I feel like the writing was on the wall. That's why I gave so much significance to it when we filmed episode 1. When you listen to like the voice message on the phone, you get this sense that the parents have gone, but like for Clementine's sake, you are hoping that they are alive and that you can. As hard as it would have been for Lee, but to give Clementine back to her parents, you know, so that she's safe and that she's with the people that she should be. But again, very dark theme, and very touching and sort of well played by Telltale, like the voice acting and the writing for this, and of course the music. So I mean, mate, it's got to the final scene. Lee and Clementine, I think, where are they? They're in a garage, aren't they? Or they're
a jewelry store, I believe.
Jewelry store, right? And before we sort of get to like the main thing here, I'd like to say that there's quite a nice parallel that I spotted. I don't know if this was intentional, but you know how like Lee's first kill in like the apocalyptic world was like, this sort of security guy or this police officer, that obviously turned zombie after the car crashes. But with Clementine, whether it was his first kill or like a first significant kill where she couldn't get helped that much, it was also a security officer for the shop, I'm guessing. But again, very tense, and like because you're playing as Lee, you feel powerless. You're sat there, you can't really move. You're just having to give her orders and things to do, and you're seeing her trying to scurry away from this walker. But of course, like, it plays out that she manages to kill the walker, and then have this tear-jerking scene, don't we, mate? Where we know it's the end for Lee.
I think it's beautiful as well that he starts the game in cuffs and he ends the game in cuffs as well, which I thought was quite powerful.
Yeah, that's good. No, I didn't spot that. That's another nice little parallel. Yeah. What did you do?
I shot because I didn't want Lee coming back as a walker, and like, let's face it, he would have just been a walking corpse locked in a jewelry store for the rest of his life. I thought it was the perfect way to end the game with a gunshot. What did you do, mate?
Yeah, I shot as well. It was one of those things, you can't, having gone through all that, you can't then see Lee turn into a walker. It felt wrong. So yeah, it was like, it was probably important for Clem. So yeah, shot him. Savage Lee is dead.
So there we go. Like, just Clementine put him in the ground for all his sins once and for all. I just have to say, mate, I mean, this scene is, I'll talk a little bit about the dialogue first. Like, it's really beautiful because it's happening. Since, 2 months prior, we know that Lee's going to die. But it's kind of always just been, it will happen. But now it's at the point where you're in the jewelry store. He's pale as all hell. And you're thinking, now it is happening. And you're just not ready for it. And the dialogue's adorable. They I think Lee says, I love you, which just breaks you. And then he says, keep your hair short. And, the whole thing's just beautiful. And this is the scene that really broke a lot of YouTubers. If you watch, PewDiePie or Jacksepticeye, they're all crying their eyes out. They're all bawling. Any, a massive YouTuber was broken at this. Maybe the most emotional video game scene in history, arguably. Just a question for you, mate. I know you're not a very sensitive person. Did you cry? And if not, did it, kind of hit you a little bit?
I didn't cry. No. It's very well done. Don't get me wrong. I've never cried at a video game. I've cried at a movie. I haven't cried at a book. But yeah, there's just something about it. Very touching. Don't get me wrong. And of course, I feel like it ended the arc. No, I wouldn't say I cried at it, mate. What about you?
I didn't cry, but my eyes were definitely, I think they welled up. When tears don't fall from your face, but your eyes are definitely kind of watery. Right. I think I had that because I really bought into their story, you know, like Clementine, this like lone girl, got adopted by Lee. It was his second chance at life, taught her how to survive. You know, they went for a big journey together, and it's the fact as well that, like, you know, Clementine literally just lost her parents and her guardian within the space of maybe like 10 minutes or whatever it was.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, so I don't know, like, it was quite a lot, you know, and I think a lot of people were broken here. But yeah, this is the moment, right, where Lee's prepped her for apocalyptic life. She's no longer like a little girl, really. This is like, from this point, we sort of see survival Clementine, where she has to look out for herself. She's not protecting anyone else until like later seasons. That is the end of The Walking Dead until we get to the mid-credit, I believe, scene where she's sat in a field.
Yeah.
So, like, I mean, she's just sort of like counting bullets, or she finds bullets, I think, and she's restocking. You feel bad because she's by herself, like this little girl just out in the countryside. You see two silhouettes in the background, and she's been advised to find Krista and Omid, and I was sat there all these years thinking, oh, that's Krista and Omid, that's good. But it was only till I showed you a video, I think literally yesterday, that the game editors kind of broke down what happens off camera, how the game works, and they actually, you will find out that it's not Krista and Omid, it's actually two zombies. Like, there's a fun fact for you, which I thought was really interesting, because for literally a decade I thought that was Krista and Omid over the hills. It's not. Maybe it's implied it is supposed to be, but it's definitely not the character models they used.
I think it is, yeah. It's implied that it's meant to be Omid and Krista. It might sort of give her a little bit of hope as well that, you know, she's not completely on her own. But yeah, I mean, the fact it's zombies, or at least zombie models, that completely puts a spin on that scene for me.
And the game just concludes, doesn't it, with a lovely song from like a Layla Diane, Take Us Back, and then the game ends, and, you know, that's it for season 1, mate. I mean, yeah, just have you enjoyed covering the season? What did you make of the episode? Let us know.
Yeah, I mean, of course, really enjoyed covering it. It's a brilliant game, like literally the first choice based game I played, and if it wasn't for this game, where would I be today? I don't know. And just a fantastic story, of course. You know, putting my, you know, objective hat on. Is the gameplay riveting? Are the choices sophisticated? No, but it's just a great story, and I think that this particular series, you could argue with many of Telltale series, it's I don't know, actually, maybe just Walking Dead. It's not necessarily about plot, is it? It's more of a character study. It's more about asking questions of like what humanity is in this world, and you know, making hard decisions and living with other people, and, you know, living with walkers as well. So yeah, it's always going to have a special place in my heart. It's come around very quickly as well. It feels like we've no longer started this, that we've finished it.
I completely agree. Like a lot, like Until Dawn, The Quarry is like a 10-part series, maybe 11 if we're doing prologues. But, like, you know, this is just a 5-parter, so it's half of what we're used to, really. Yeah, and like you say, absolutely brilliant game, historic, like such a landmark game for, you know, choice-based games. And it's just an absolute pleasure to cover and revisit, to be honest, because it, you know, spurned a lot of other sort of games that I got into. The first Telltale game I ever played, so yeah, just absolutely iconic. If I'm being a little critical and I'm talking about the episode alone, probably the worst of the 5. I know it had like the emotional tearjerker moments, but just in terms of length and pace, I think the episode is an hour and a half to complete, while like the others are usually around 2 hours and a half or 3 hours. So I felt a little robbed of time. It felt very fast-paced. Like, the only moment of downtime you get is where you're just sort of sat chilling in the attic, or you're on the hospital roof. It just felt very much like, oh yeah, like, go back to the house, kill Ben off, kill Kenny off, Krista and Omid are gone, bye Lee. Yeah, so just it rushed through the episode a lot.
Yeah.
So we saw a ranking the other day, and someone said this was the best Telltale Walking Dead episode ever, and I would say it was the worst in season 1.
Yeah.
I feel like having the tearjerker, a really powerful scene at the end, doesn't justify calling it the best episode. I feel like you have to look at the episode as a whole. and be more objective. So yeah, I don't know what you would say about that, mate, about the episode alone.
Yeah, I honestly couldn't really add anything to it because I'm in agreement with what you're saying. It's interesting. I think we could possibly do a video, couldn't we, of like episode ranking? Because I do have an idea in mind. I think this one probably would be the worst because it's apart from Kenny, I'm not that big on Omid, Krista. Obviously, I killed off Ben previously. So the characters that you're with, Clem's not there anymore. Whole Stranger thing, liked what they were trying to do, but for me, like the fact that it didn't really work unless you stole the supplies, it's a bit of a, like I say, it missed the mark. But it does redeem itself with the ending and sort of the touching father-daughter relationship. So I'm not completely heartless, folks. I just didn't cry at it. We can wrap it up there, mate. Of course, although we have finished this series, we will now be doing our bonus episodes, so you can look out for character tier lists. Maybe there's a particular debate you want us to have, or character quizzes and the like. So do give us suggestions in the comments section.
Nah, that summed up perfectly. So yeah, like you said, we'll do more Walking Dead based videos, some shorter ones. We might end up doing like a character quiz in the future. It's been great covering Telltale for the first time. Let us know in the comments as well, guys, if you enjoyed the series, if you'd like us to do season 2 at some point. And let us know if there's any other sort of Telltale games out there that you guys would like to see covered in the future, and we'll be sure to cast our eyes over your opinions. It's been an absolute pleasure recovering this game. Like I keep reiterating, absolute classic. So yeah, it's a little sad that we're ending it, but join us for next Saturday, where we're looking at a new studio we haven't covered yet, Quantic Dream, so we can look at Detroit Become Human. Jack hasn't played the game, and this is going to be his fresh take. You get to see Jack react to it for the first time without knowing what goes on. And trust me, guys, I've already started the edits. It's an absolute pleasure to see what goes down.
Yeah, boy. All right, sweet. We'll see you next time, guys.
See you in the next one. We'll see you in Detroit. Bye, guys.
Bye.
Get the fuck out of here!